Some films were harmed in the making of this podcast. From Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and the palatial FYC studio, you're listening to For Your Consideration,
the podcast featuring roundtable discussions reevaluating the cinematic canon of past masterpieces and modern classics. I'm your host, Dustin Friesenan.
And I'm Mike Josic, and we would like to welcome you all back to another episode of the show. We've been on a bit of a hiatus, but Dustin and I found an opportunity to sit down and check out another film, and so here we are doing a record and putting out a new episode for y'all.
All y'all.
Considering we're all kind of trying to live our best pandemic life, and that seems to be on a lot of people's minds out there, first off, we'd like to say, stay safe, wash your hands, don't touch your face. And secondly, the film that we chose, we actually announced on our last episode that we were going to do broadcast news, but
Mike then changed his mind a couple weeks later, and then another month or two later, COVID comes out, and then here we are.
And it kind of fit the theme to go with this film, and it also just sort of fed the mood that I was in. I've been revisiting...
Honestly, that's the most important thing.
The mood?
Feeding the mood that Mike is in to get us to actually sit down and watch the film.
I've been revisiting a lot of George Romero's, mostly his Dead films, and also Empire of the Dead. And
the Crazies.
And that's why I said mostly. And it's been on my mind. And we covered Night of the Living Dead, I think a year or two ago. And we had yet to do Dawn of the Dead. So since that's, I think, the only other one that's on the list, we decided to do the 1978 Romero zombie film, Dawn of the Dead.
AKA that movie that doesn't actually feature any sort of sunrise in it whatsoever. It has every time of day except for the dawn.
Didn't it show the dawn? Or was it dusk?
There was dusk, there was night, there was day. I feel a bit lied to, honestly. Hell, it even took place over the course of weeks and months.
They were stuck in that mall for a while. This is a true story. So I'm going to just go through the credits quick so that we can get to the discussion. Dawn of the Dead was directed by George A. Romero. It was produced by Claudio Argento, Richard P. Rubenstein, and Alfredo Cuomo. It was written by George A. Romero and Dario Argento. It starred David M.G., Ken Foree, Scott Reininger, and Galen Ross. Music was by The Goblins and Dario Argento. Cinematography by Michael Gornick. It was edited by George A. Romero, and it was distributed by United Film Distribution Company and released on September 1st, 1978 in Italy and April 20th, 1979 in the US. The film has gone on to be something of a cult legend. It's loved by fans and critics, has a 93% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It's considered one of the 500 greatest movies of all time by Empire Magazine. It has inspired countless spoofs, parodies, and spin-offs and homages.
And it was voted by 5 critics to be the top film of all time on the BFI's Sight and Sound list, getting it to 323rd on the critics poll.
Now, anybody who listened to our Night of the Living Dead episode might remember that we both voted that as a masterpiece.
I honestly can't think of having voted it otherwise. I mean, we do have a list of all of our votes on my computer, but I'm just lazy, so I'm not going to look it up. I'm just going to declare it was a masterpiece.
And considering how this film is regarded, I was really curious what the outcome was going to be. I haven't seen this film in years. Quite a few years.
The last time I saw this film was a year or two after the Dawn of the Dead remake came out, and I saw pretty much all of the movies that existed at that time.
That might have been the same time I did, too. Because I saw that one in the theater, and I probably wanted to buck up on the Romero version.
The latest I would have seen it is around the time Land of the Dead came out. Either way, it's been over a decade for myself.
I just want to qualify, there are numerous versions of this film out there. There is a 140-minute cut, which a lot of people kind of considered the go-to. That was Romero's original cut before he edited it down. Romero prefers the theatrical cut, which comes in at 127 minutes. Argento actually made a 119-minute version, which was released in Italy, which is why it had the release date before the U.S. release date, and that was edited with some different music. It was all Goblin's music. This one was the one that essentially appeared in 1978 in theaters. It is Romero's preferred version, so that was the way that we decided to go with watching this film today.
Given that it's the closest to their vision.
That's usually the preference, yeah. If there's a director's cut that they say, this is how the movie should have been, that's what we will generally like to go with. Now, having said that, Dustin, you usually get to go first on these discussions, so what did you think on revisiting Dawn of the Dead?
All of my memories of Dawn of the Dead, this version of it's not the Snyder remake, are pretty much covered up by the Snyder remake. I remember they're in a mall, I remember they're upstairs, I remember few survivors, and I remember the biker assault at the end. And more than anything, I remember the god-awful, stupid 2-second part where the one biker, in the midst of the assault, while everyone's dying, sticks his arm into the heart rate monitor cuff, gets killed, and the arm is still in there. It's like, why are you doing this?
He's using it, and one of his compatriots is like, we don't got time for this. He literally runs back to it in the midst of the zombie swarm.
Like, if I'm going to die, I'm not going to die without knowing my blood pressure. It's the dumbest thing, and it stuck with me for all this time, and it's pretty much my only memory of the whole film.
I do feel a lot of people have criticized the later Dead films because Romero, he's got kind of a silly sense of humor, and he likes to incorporate sort of Looney Tunes style humor into these movies, and that's generally what people are responding unfavorably to. I feel like this is an early instance of him trying to inject that kind of humor. They probably saw the heart rate machine and were like, hey, wouldn't that be cool? Or Savini might have seen it and come up with the idea for the effect.
Or
but
just
it's still
a little
ridiculous
joke about the blood pressure is 0, and it's like, how do we do that? You could have had a zombie go in there.
Actually, that would have been great.
Or even if you had him go in there, get shot by one of the people from up above, and that's how it alerts the raiders. But then that person becomes a zombie, and now he's stuck in there, which would explain how the zombie gets in there, and it shows the blood pressure as 0. Of course, this is all discussion after the fact.
There's a lot of ways that could have gone. Yeah, we're not here to rewrite the movie, but
I am. If it gets me a job as a writer, I'll rewrite it. Sure.
Dustin Friesenhand's Dawn of the Dead. Coming 2022.
Really, you think I can get funding and all that done?
Start the Kickstarter. Start the Kickstarter tonight, man.
Phase 1: learn how to write. But upon revisiting this film, I definitely didn't remember the beginning. Of course, in Snyder's, it's immediate action, and they all run to the mall damn near immediately. Here, they start off in a newsroom. And actually, I loved that scene. There's just a lot of people who are panicking because they don't know what's going on. They're interviewing a scientist. But by the end of that scene is when I started having the issue that I have with this film. And that's, as the scientist is talking, the entire newsroom, they're all just shouting for no reason. Are you filming this? Are you not filming this? Do you want to have an answer from him or not? Are you just shouting for fun?
Well, there was conflict because they were saying that they wanted to put up the places for people to go, and
the guy in charge, yeah, he wanted.
And she said those places have already been like nixed as no longer operating. But he's like, I want to have those things up on the board, like
otherwise people aren't going to watch our show. At no point did he say this is the most recent information we have, so let's keep going with it, or let's edit it. No, it was just showing that he wanted money. So
that's kind of where the chaos started.
And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. I've got zero issue with that. But why is everyone standing behind the camera just shouting? Nobody can hear what's going on at that point. It's adding to nothing. And it seems that that's sort of the start of everything everybody does is the dumbest possible thing. Romero's zombies, given that they just walk around slowly, they've never been that threatening. In Night of the Living Dead, it worked perfectly because they were just sort of hanging out at the cabin. They didn't necessarily know where to go. They didn't have their information. And it was a small number of people who didn't have that much in the way of weaponry. So it's as the zombies started increasing, it became more of an issue, and the threat was there. But as we move on here, you see the military guys raiding the house, And that's all fine. People are panicking. People are acting stupidly. They don't want to kill their dead. But there's the pauses before killing the zombies. That still works at first. People aren't too used to this. Then you learn it's been going on for several weeks, at which point, are you not used to this at this point? All right, fine. But they'll touch down at that gas station to fill up the helicopter, which apparently is just put into this big chasm behind this rectangular thing. There's not an actual gas cap or anything. I guess that's how helicopters work in this world.
Well, I think he did open the flap and reach in and he took something out. So
Maybe, but
I think that flap just protects the...
When he was pulling out the gas nozzle, it was just in there like at a 90-degree angle, or not even a 90-degree angle. It was pretty much parallel to the... It's a small, stupid nitpick. It's just something I noticed for whatever
I thought he
reason.
kind of pulled it out to sort of let it rest there while he was dealing with zombie action, but
that's the issue, the zombie action. Everybody splits up, sort of walks away, nobody's watching anyone else's backs, and everyone gets set upon by zombies at assorted times. At the one point, Flyboy, as they call him, he's tackled by a zombie, and they're fighting in the dumb zombie fight that they constantly have all the time, where everybody's groping each other and the zombie's not really biting, and he's shouting at the woman, run away, run away. And you think, all right, she's got two choices here, run or help. But she chooses option 3, which is stand there like a goddamn idiot and just wait. And there's a zombie right behind her, and she's not even looking at that one. She's watching the fight on the ground, and just nothing happens.
you could maybe argue shock.
You could argue shock, 100%, until she immediately decides afterwards, no, I want to be useful, and I'm going to take charge of my life, which she does. She wants to learn how to shoot, she wants to learn how to fly the helicopter, and I totally get behind that. But I mean, this is still the world that's been around for a month now. Well, 3 weeks, presumably, based off of what they said at the beginning, where the scientists didn't know, have had no good information for 3 weeks. You're not used to any of this yet? I thought, like, this is an apocalypse. Have you not seen anything yet? You work at a news station. You should be getting footage of this stuff all the time. Granted, in person, it'll be different. But then when Flyboy comes up and takes out the zombie in front of her with the widest swing I've ever seen in my entire life.
He doesn't even aim for the head.
No, it's like he's trying to just do a tackle.
It's like an
holding onto the hammer.
underhanded swing into the zombie's armpit.
But he misses and basically tackles him. Are you tackling him? Are
It's
you
bizarre.
hugging him? It's insane. And that I find is a bit of an issue with these slow zombies, is to try to make them seem dangerous, people have to act in dumb ways to let them get close.
I totally agree with you that Night of the Living Dead, it managed to actually have some suspense. And partially because there was the threat from outside, because you had the zombies, which were increasing in number, and they were attracted to the farmhouse. But there was also conflict inside, because you had younger people, older people,
You had Ben and
newer
the
people that
angry
knew
guy
other
in the
people,
basement.
and people who were just coming in that nobody else knew, and you had the African American guy, and you had all the white people, and you had the girl in shock, and like there was tension within the group. So if you weren't immediately concerned about what was going on outside, you were kind of concerned about what was going on inside and how that would impact your characters and how well that they deal with what's going on outside. With this one, your four main characters, they're all sort of on the same page. And like you said, in order for them to be in a situation where there's any threat, they have to continually do stupid things. And
When the fourth guy dies, he's the first one to go. It's because he's being an idiot. He drops his bag. Well, he forgets his bag. Then he drops his bag, and then he drops down in between the two trucks to go get it. Dude, no, just don't even worry about it. Even if you just drive away 100 feet, let the zombies come to you, spin around, and grab it then. I mean,
same thing they did in the store, where it's like, let's go downstairs and attract them down there, and then go back upstairs so that we can leave the door.
And when they have an issue, they go out, they deal with the issue, because Flyboy's an idiot at that point. But then they're like, all right, same plan, let's do it again. Because it's like, we have time. There's no rush.
They could literally drive away and just hang out for a while or something. Yeah, it's even the scene where they first, as a group, are coming out of the JCPenney's, and she's like, give me the keys. He doesn't sneak back in behind the glass with her. He gets down on his knees, surrounded by zombies, trying to separate the keys from his belt.
You don't need to be out there.
Like,
what are you doing?
Yeah, he could have just snuck back in. There's just
When they
so
all
many
come-
ways that they could have done things smarter. And I was actually arguing with you during the film because you'd be like, why are they wasting ammo? Or why are they doing this? And I'm like, I'm doing the retconning or the defending where I'm saying, well, they don't know how long this thing is going to last. And, you know, they're not maybe thinking about the fact that they're going to be running out of bullets, or just trying to come up with sort of some rationales. But in cases like the ones that you're pointing out,
He shot the guy in the head 3 times.
there's just no rationale, and there's no tension.
They just insist on running up to the zombies, and sometimes it's like I'll punch him in the face, which of course is a very bad idea. Let's not punch a zombie in the teeth. I feel that's a way to get yourself infected. But even at first, when they start going to the JCPenney, they come outside, and there's a group of 7 or 8 of them, and they decide, let's just barrel our way through them as opposed to shooting them. Now, at first, I could get behind the notion that if you start shooting, that'll attract them. But you've already turned on the music. If anything's going to attract a whole lot more from outside, it's going to be the music. So why would you?
Well, you can't hear the music from a mall outside the mall.
They turned on the lights, they turned on...
But they turned everything on, that's true. So anybody who could see through the glass, that might attract them. That's true.
And they had a good plan with, okay, let's block up all the doors, we'll lock them, we'll make sure that they can't get in, and then we'll have the run of the place.
Even the idea of creating that facade to cover the door so that if anybody does come in, they don't know that there's a door that's going up. Like, they're protecting themselves that way, and they had a nice little setup there. They took some furniture up and they decorated the place. Like, they could literally hole up in there for a while. And just tons of bad decisions.
Though now that you mention it, with the getting furniture up there, which honestly somewhat impressive, the
for anybody who's
that they
moved
built-
furniture up a several floor walk up.
Yeah, but the facade that they built, they would have had to get all the furniture up there first. That's for sure, because
Yes.
otherwise you're tearing down the facade, which might explain why they never used drywall and they just used a bit of cardboard that they painted, or maybe it was wallpaper.
Could have been plywood. It was thin. It was unnecessarily or surprisingly thin, rather.
It bent.
Plywood bends.
Not that much.
Not like that, true. But I mean, where are you going to find drywall in the mall, right? Unless you're stripping it from some other area in the mall.
The same place they're finding the wallpaper or the paint, it's the exact same shade as the rest of it. They're likely to have stuff for repairs.
Possibly.
Possibly. Maybe at the hardwood store where they got all the wood that they used.
Yeah, but a hardwood store doesn't sell drywall. Like a big hardware store with a yard or a warehouse will sell drywall or lumber or stuff like that.
It's hard to say. You could say that they don't have any drywall. I, for one, was surprised that they had a helipad on top of the mall. I mean, we live next to...
I was too.
We live next to the biggest one in Canada, and there's no helipad there to the best of my understanding.
I will say that I do genuinely like this movie, and I think it's a great idea. And for years, I mean, you hear about how this is a savage commentary on consumer life and
There's a couple comments on
modern
it.
life in general. I mean, it's there. It is genuinely there. But I think the legend of the movie kind of lives on a little bit stronger than the film itself. And like I said, I do genuinely like this. I like all of Romero's zombie films.
Absolutely.
From Night to Survival and even Empire of the Dead, which is in comic book form. I mean, I dig them. I dig them all, and they all have their place, and they all have the thing that they're saying about the world.
I, for one, always enjoyed viewing them as vignettes, little stories that happen within a shared universe, none of which take away from any other one. They just happen at different points in time. You have night, which is rural, dawn, which is urban. You have day, which is military, land, which is future, when, of course, they start rebuilding. Then, of course, diary is once again back to the basics, and survival is on an island. All of them are just vignettes within this world, and I enjoy each and every one of them, just some more than others.
And as I was saying, it's a great idea. And I'm not, I like those other Dead films. They all have varying budgets and varying levels of effects and acting and production value and whatever. And I've never let that get in the way of my enjoyment of any of the films.
Like, I'm not going to complain about the fact that they didn't run over any of the zombies. I know that's special effects that would have been difficult at 78 to just have them plow through swarms of people. I'm not sure how they would have done it in 78. But they didn't, and I'm not going to blame them at all for it. Instead, they just had, people on the side who jumped away from a moving vehicle as though they were hit a few seconds before the cut. And that's fine. Any of the shots and the unnecessary amount of very, very red blood, which looks very 70s and 80s, not a problem.
I think that's a censor thing. The faker the blood, the easier the censors are on you. They actually, this film, I think it was this film. It was this one or Day. They had like an X rating. The MPAA wouldn't clear it. So they put in a couple of scenes that they had taken out that had some jokes in them, some humor. And the MPAA was like, okay, this could go. Actually, it must be this one because Day of the Dead was released unrated. So this actually got to go out with an R rating because they put a little bit of extra humor in it that they had initially taken out. The mixture of gore and violence and humor, that blend, I guess it was the right amount to get the rating that they needed. This is considered a really gory and really violent movie.
But a lot of it is not that gory. There are the gory scenes, of course, at the beginning with the raid. The removal of the zombies actually was just sort of glossed over. They're just like, how many zombies are left in here? I don't know, but it's time to go a-hunting. And then the next scene is just a bunch of zombies laying on the ground.
I do think that Night of the Living Dead was gorier. I think because it was in the stark black and white. I think because the way it was handled and the way it was shot and lit, it felt scarier and gorier. This one, it felt more like watching gags. And that's not just because the blood was a brighter red. I remember seeing this.
The soundtrack is gaggy as hell.
I remember seeing this when I was much younger, and I remember what it was like to have these movies out there, and they were like this and Evil Dead and Texas Chainsaw, and Texas Chainsaw actually doesn't even really have gore in it. They were all considered, just these horrible movies, and they're so gory, and the British, they had them labeled as like video nasties. They couldn't even get played. And I remember when I finally got around to seeing them, there was a part of me that was like, okay, no, I get it, because it's pretty gory, but I also didn't think it was as bad as they were sort of letting on. So I don't know if that says something about me or the MPAA or the world at large at the time, but these movies, out of all the ones that he's done in this series, the scariest ones are Diary of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead. And Day of the Dead is gorier than Dawn of the Dead. Land of the Dead is gorier than them.
Of course, that was getting into the age of the modern age where stuff gets a lot more realistic and a lot more violent and a lot more acceptable to be violent.
Savini was saying, Day of the Dead was kind of legendary in its time for being, like, people were just saying it's disgusting. The fact that anybody would make this is, why would they make this? And, there's the scene in there where the guy gets disemboweled as he's lying on the ground. It was stuff like that was bothering people. Savini said that Day of the Dead was his masterpiece because the techniques got better, the team got better, like everything about it was firing on all cylinders. And having recently re-seen Day of the Dead, watching Dawn of the Dead and kind of comparing the effects, like there was quite a jump in that 7 years. Yeah, 78 to 85. Quite a jump in what they were able to achieve. But sadly, I didn't find what they did achieve in Dawn sort of satisfactory after all this time. It was kind of a letdown. There's a lot of things in this movie that were kind of a letdown. The script, I still like the script. The script is still pretty solid. I kind of feel like it was the execution, what they had available and how they were able to put it together. Just
well, like as you said, the script was good. The special effects, at a certain point, you have to say it was 78 with this budget, so you let a lot of that slide and you just go with the flow. But there's no excuse for that music, for that soundtrack.
I think the music is trying to, it's like the humor thing, right? It's leavening, and I don't remember this music bothering me, 10 or 20 years ago.
Like, there's no way to actually insert oneself into the film to ever be scared by anything going on when you've got this weird, fake 60s poppy stuff going on, and I don't know what the heck's going on. Just somebody on a xylophone every now and then hitting a few things. It's weird, and I certainly hope to hell they haven't been actually playing this stuff inside of malls at any point. Like, that's terrible.
I have mixed feelings about it. Some of it works for me, some of it doesn't work for me.
Night was great for the sound. I remember it being minimalist.
Yeah.
And it works very well to build up an atmosphere. Here it's just all the time, especially any time they're just doing a bunch of rapid shots of them going around checking out stores, or when the zombies are in at the end and walking around during the credits. It's so jarring for the tone of the film.
The film has mixed tones to it, and I'm okay with that. The music is actually the least thing that bothers me about the film. I think if there were some of the other things that we've complained about, like the lack of a threat level or any suspense,
or reasonable actions made by the characters,
or genuine conflict, if those existed, I'd be fine with the music. It would not bother me as much. I would just attribute it to it's a mall. They're going for silly mall music and playing some kind of atmosphere music and some making it diegetic music, and that's just what they were doing. So I do stand on the other side of the room as far as that compared to you. It wasn't a death sentence for me with the music, but the lack of urgency. To imagine that there's 20 more minutes to this movie in an extended cut and an hour more in a German cut somewhere. It's an assembly of like everything that they shot for the film. I don't know where it could go. I'm honestly kind of curious now to watch the extended cut, because maybe seeing how some of the other stuff that's going on, because there's a sequence that continues on with the docks, I heard. I don't know, it might just be more mall stuff. I don't know.
Because I felt that it worked best when there weren't any zombies around, when that was just sort of the world that they're in. That's what worked best in Night of the Living Dead. As you said, it was the conflict between the people inside the house, knowing that there was a threat looming on the outside. We didn't need to see the threat. We knew it was out there. You can just have that fear, that knowledge. Here, they spend so much time getting rid of that threat and then having nothing really to deal with on the inside. She's pregnant. That's about the biggest thing they have going on. And it's not like she gives birth at any point. They have one scene where she's questioned as to whether or not she wants to keep the baby and talks to Flyboy about it, and that's about it. Never comes up again.
It's interesting, having seen this now, and you've mentioned the Snyder version a couple of times, and I don't want to make this about the Snyder version, but as much as people have complained about the Snyder version, and there are detractors, I understand some of the choices that they made now, because the group that's gathered in the mall, you have Ty Burrell playing that asshole. You have the woman who is pregnant, and not just 3.5 months pregnant, but like really pregnant. So,
and she's bit. So there's that question of what do you do about that?
And whether, I'm not going to comment on whether I think they were like good ideas or bad ideas, but clearly when James Gunn approached that script, he was like, okay, they're in the mall. Now what?
And they had conflict there. They split the mall pretty much into two sections. Like, this is our place, that's your place, we just won't talk to each other. And it's kind of what happened like The Mist or The Other Mist, which is the TV series. Basically, you're hanging out in a mall and you have disparate groups and you create some tension that way because no one's going outside.
And it really fits with Romero's approach because, this movie is kind of to the nth degree. The zombies aren't really the threat. The zombies are just extenuating circumstances and an occasional pain in the ass.
And usually that's what a good zombie movie is, where it's the apocalypse and it's what are people doing during said times.
It's usually people fucking over other people. You get a little bit of that in Night. You definitely get that in Day. You absolutely get that in Land. Survival is all about shitty things that people do to people, and like the dead are there. At that point, you're just sort of accepting this world. So, in a way, I kind of feel like that 2004 Dawn of the Dead, it skewed a little bit closer to thematically what kind of Romero's been pushing for a while. Where this one is considered like, this is the pinnacle of the films. Most people will place this as number one, Night as number two.
And I'm wondering, when the hell was the last time you've seen these? And what kind of rose-colored glasses are you watching? Because, Night is great. There's nothing I can really complain about in Night. I haven't seen Day in a long time, but I definitely have very fond memories of it compared to Dawn, which all I could remember prior to this viewing was I like Snyder's version better.
We're going to get a lot of YouTube comments on this, I think.
That's fine. Bring it.
But also looking at the other films, so many people have talked about how Romero just progressively gets worse, the law of diminishing returns. And tonally, aesthetically, with the humor and the effects and whatever, I mean, he's remained pretty consistent. I honestly think it's the fan base changing, getting older, whatever it is. It's one of those things where these were, like, Dawn was the one that everyone saw. Night was a thing, and it became a midnight movie, but Dawn was the one that really made an impression on people. And then 7 years later, Day comes out, and people were expecting another Dawn, and Day was different. So they kind of rejected it. And Land of the Dead, everybody was like, oh, I hope it's a return to the great Romero, which to them is Dawn, and it let them down.
And I remember one of the complaints a lot of people had about Land was that, oh, now the zombies are thinking. That was introduced in this one. When they were talking on the news reports about how some of the zombies are starting to use tools, and they're like, it's very animalistic, they're using it to hit stuff, and we got, like, monkeys can do that, whatever. But that was expanded upon in Day, and expanded upon in Land. It's actually one of the more consistent things throughout the series, that the more time goes on, the more the zombies are learning and returning to form.
And there's a fun twist in Empire, which I'm not going to spoil. But he pushes that even farther, and then you kind of find out a reason for why it's pushed to the extent it is in Empire. And that has to do with another group of living dead.
Dun, dun, dun.
But I digress. Performances were good.
I got no problem with the performances. They did what they could with the script that they were giving. As I said, the characters themselves, when they were forced to make a stupid decision, they did. That officer in the raid who was super racist and just went around just killing everybody, like, that's absurd what he's doing, but that's what he was given, and he was acting it out in a way that actually built up from his initial racist comments.
He clearly was taking this as an opportunity to exercise things that he has wanted to do for a long time.
And you can get that from the few minutes he is on screen. So that was well done, well played.
Super well done. Like, that whole sequence up to the point where Peter and Roger pull up to get on the helicopter, that was really, really interesting. And then the movie just dies for a while. In my opinion, up until they basically lock down the mall, and then it gets kind of interesting.
Though it's really hard to really get behind the Raiders.
And then the Raiders show
make
up,
no sense.
And it falls apart again.
The Raiders acting, I can't really get behind. You have the guy who's there wearing military gear. He's wearing military gear as though he's trying to trick the people in the mall. I don't know why, because everyone else is wearing biker gear. But he's trying to talk to them, trying to sneak their way in, and everyone behind him is hooting and hollering like a bunch of friggin' idiots. Are you guys professional raiders? Have you not survived for the last half a year out here? Because you're all acting like a bunch of assholes and a bunch of idiots. Are you just going to shoot your way in? And I'm not saying that you can't, just that you're going to get a bunch of people killed for no reason that are your own men. By attacking a fort that's already stocked up. You sneak in first. It's absurd. They let them know that they're coming. And then after the driving around like idiots, I can understand, I can get behind, okay, stealing some stuff, and then you're going to leave. You let in so many zombies that the members of your party who are shot, I can forgive that if you're supposed to be skilled because, they snuck up on you. They wouldn't have had you, I don't know, been sneaky about it, but whatever. But then they start getting killed by zombies because they're running around like idiots. And they're not helping each other out. How many raids are you going to be able to pull off like this? This is a Pyrrhic victory at best.
They do seem more interested in just wrecking stuff than they do in actually stocking up on supplies. It's just pandemonium.
Hell, the one guy's going for TVs before the other guy's like, why are you even getting a TV? If you're going for food, this is a good place to hole up and stick around for a while. What might have made it more interesting is if they clear out the place earlier in the film, in half hour less, the raiders come by and talk their way in, and now they're messing with you. You only had 1 or 2 representatives come out to represent the survivors you had. You got the pregnant woman upstairs. Only the raiders, they come in and they're like, oh, now we're in charge. And so you're thinking, crap, we've got the pregnant woman upstairs. We've got to help her out. She's hidden behind the wall. Flyboy wants to protect his his baby and his woman, especially since these guys were shouting about women and that raiders got a rape, right? And so that could be a conflict for the last little bit, where the heroes decide that they're going to basically burn the place down, let all the zombies in, and escape out the roof that the raiders don't know about while the raiders are distracted by the zombies. Boom, there's a plot. Boom, there's some conflict going on there. And now suddenly people's actions make a bit more sense. You wouldn't have to have as much death prior to. The fourth guy wouldn't have to die just so you have some more people on the good guy's side in order to enact this plan.
And it creates that internal conflict that we were talking about that they obviously had in Night, and that they have in Day, and that they have in Land. And Diary, and Survival, all of them. Yeah, totally. It's just, this is the big action sequence to finish things off. That's really all it is.
And for that to happen, they have to have a lot of deaths. And for the deaths to happen, people have to act like idiots.
And even the rating process, like, Flyboy fucked it up.
He did. He started shooting people because this is our place. We took it over. Just wait a bit. They'll leave. Just like the smart military guy was saying. He was the voice of reason the entire time, quite frankly. Although his last act was to go into a room about to commit suicide. Then he's like, you know what? I changed my mind. Fight his way out.
With a gun that you're not quite sure will actually penetrate his skull. It was so tiny.
If you're going to kill yourself, wait to see where the pregnant woman lands first, at least. You
Yeah.
kill yourself then.
Don't send a pregnant woman off on her own into the wasteland.
Ridiculous.
Super ridiculous. I mean, you're right. Like you even said, you can kill yourself later. If you're really dead set on it.
And so it all sort of adds up to, why is this one Romero's favorite? Why is this one the fan favorite?
This one isn't Romero's favorite.
Oh, I thought you said it was.
No, Day of the Dead is Romero's favorite, followed by Survival of the Dead.
My apologies.
This is the fan favorite. This is the one that fans and critics seem to say, this was the game changer. Like Night of the Living Day was a game changer, and then Dawn of the Dead.
It's kind of like Night of the Living Day?
It's kind of like Alien and Aliens, right? Like, most people will tell you that Alien is a masterpiece, but when they talk about Aliens, the eyes light up and they go, oh. It's the same thing with Night and Dawn. Like, people will acknowledge that Night of the Living Dead was a masterpiece and it was a groundbreaking horror film and it changed the way, horror movies are made and it created the zombie genre. But they talk about Dawn of the Dead with this excitement,
reverence,
with this spark, yeah.
And I think that it's one of those things where it's time and place.
I agree.
Still here.
They're after us. They know we're still in here.
They're after the place. They don't know why. They just remember. Remember that they want to be in here.
What the hell are they?
They're us, that's all. There's no more room in hell.
What?
Something my granddaddy used to tell us. You know Macumba? Voodoo. Granddad was a priest in Trinidad. Used to tell us, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Which is why we'll have to move into our judgment portion so that I can just flat out say it's a time and place, and that's why it can't be a masterpiece for me, but it will fall into museum piece.
I will agree with you there. I'm going to go museum piece. I honestly thought I was going to go masterpiece going in because my memories of this film are much stronger than I think the film itself. The fact that I loved the beginning and I loved the third quarter, but did not like the second or fourth quarter of the film. It was too uneven. I like what it's doing. I like the themes. It's an important part of the trilogy, of the development of Romero as a filmmaker. But yeah. Museum piece.
There's too much that took me out of the film.
I honestly think Night might be the only masterpiece in the series, for my opinion.
I'd have to rewatch Day for that, but that might be something we'd agree on.
So those are our thoughts on Dawn of the Dead. Send your hate mail and negative comments to...
to me, because I was so flattering on the remake. Critics aren't allowed to like remakes. Blasphemy. Except for The Thing.
We'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Hit us up on the social medias. Hit us up on Facebook, YouTube, comment wall. Tell us your thoughts about the show, about the film, about our comments, whatever ails you. Like, share, subscribe, and follow on all the social medias. Share with family and friends. If you know anybody else who likes film podcasts, commentary, conversations, send them our way. Next time around, we'll be doing one of two films.
Either we'll be checking out Zoolander, as we have a guest host who wanted to take a look at that with us. But if we cannot arrange that kind of time, we will be instead taking a look at Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, and look at some exploitation written by a
Roger Ebert.
Very famous critic. Yes. Featuring a line that I've heard a number of times inside of a Navicon Torture Technology song. So this will be the second movie that I've wanted to see based off of weird, distorted power noise music.
And with that, we bid you a final adieu. Farewell, stay safe. As we said before, wash your hands, don't touch your face, share your toilet paper and hand sanitizer.
It's like they say in Cub Scouts. You can pick your friends and you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose.
All right, we'll see you guys next time on the next installment of For Your Consideration.
I've been your host, Dustin Friesenham.
And I've been Mike Josick.
Peace. I have to take that back, though, because The Thing wasn't a remake. It was never a remake. It was a sequel to The Thing from Outer Space. Spiritual, in a sense. Because in The Thing from Outer Space, they get it out of the ice. And then The Thing 2011 is sort of a remake of The Thing from Outer Space, if anything. So I apologize for that mistake. That's okay. Mike's just going to cut out the part where I say, except for The Thing, and then this whole spiel, and it's all going to be good.